Well, thank you for doing this and congrats on the film.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging out.
Oh, totally. I had a good time with it. It's just like the right amount of weird to fit when you're in like a mood. Like it's such a good mood movie. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's funny to not see it at the festival, right? And everyone's cramming in 9 movies and you don't really have time to think about anything. Good, bad. Okay, move on. Uh, that's the fall for me. But see it a couple weeks ago and you come out and you're just like, hmm, this is a movie that I know whether it's this month, this year, next year, like it's gonna have a following. It's just that sort of vibe movie that people who vibe with are gonna be like, this is everything to me. And that's pretty
Yeah,
cool
it's very
about
pull.
them. Yeah. When
Yeah. It,
I was about to say when you read it, does it read that way, or do you kind of have a hunch, or does it just be like, I just want to be involved?
yeah, it's I mean all of that. It reads is like this is not made probably for mainstream. It's definitely quirky, wild. But I think a lot of people can, especially now, I don't know. I feel like the world's changing and people are more open to seeing like weird stuff.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think that it's just there for a unique audience, but like also I think a lot of people can just sit and enjoy it. It's definitely one that you'll think about, even if you didn't like it, you'll think about it forever because it's crazy.
Oh yeah. Like you can describe this to someone strategically, right? And you can describe it as like almost sounds like an Oscar movie, right? Oh my God, Kristen Stewart's gonna fall in love with a bodybuilder. That sound give it some awards. But you can also describe it to someone like, I don't know, she might turn into the Hulk once, and Ed Harris eats a bug at one point. Like you could really like fit it to like who you want to enjoy this movie. And it kind of works for both sides because
Yeah.
it is sort of like you said, it's weird, but it's trafficking in the world of like, but why? Why can't it be a weird movie? Because like the story's not weird. It's the execution that you go, oh, Rose is interesting. She's got things on her mind.
Yeah, the story is like your classic, good guy, bad guy, or like um ethically ambiguous
Yeah.
person, bad, like maybe we're all bad guys, but like bad and worse. And it's like, yeah, it's this fun crime family story. But yeah, and then Rose adds her unique kind of body horror wild twist to it. And I don't know, I just it, it was the first time I'd read a script where I couldn't put it down. I
Yeah.
was shaking when I'm reading it because I'm also trying to put myself in Jackie's shoes and like she goes through the ringer. And I didn't see the ending coming, which I think I've been so bored going to the movies like lately. It's every now and then you get one that sticks out to you, but a lot of stuff is just so formulaic, and this was definitely not.
Oh yeah. And you can't really compare it to things. Like the narrative, like you said, we kind of can do it. And I know I was thinking of like Bound when the movie ended, but normally you can go like, here's the 10 things this is like to kind of pinpoint it. And you're like, well, I can think of one movie and only in like very broad strokes. And all of a sudden you're like, that means something. I think that if you're able to get that across the finish line, just because I think it's so easy for the people who, decide whether the movie gets made, they go, well, but we don't know what this is like, so we're not going to give you the money. And that's frustrating because I'm sure you read it and you go, well, one, I hope it gets made. Two, I hope it gets made with me. Three, I hope once I'm in it that they still give us the money to make it get made. Like you start overthinking it when you're like, this is good. Like, is it too good? Like maybe if it wasn't as good, it would get made. Like you start
Yeah.
doubting yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those especially being on other projects that are like that are more cautious, I guess. It's definitely one of those things where you're like, who is this for? Like, this is a huge risk because it's not going to do well like internationally because it'll probably be banned in a lot of places. And it's going to make people, it's going to force people to think and change
Yeah.
perspectives. And I feel like a lot of people are just really into laziness now. And yeah, when I was reading it, I was like, I don't know how this was how it got made, but I'm glad it did
Yeah.
because it was a movie that was like for me. Like this is a movie I wanted to see. It's a movie Rose wanted to see, Kristen wanted to see, and it turns out it's a movie that a lot of people wanted to see. So
Yeah.
I'm just really I'm really, it gives me hope for the future of film, I guess.
A little bit, yeah, no, and you're right, but no, you're right about the international market. Also, I think it's international money is where Kristen's popular. Like that's its international market. Who likes Kristen Stewart? But no, watching it, I think seeing the way you guys bounce off each other also is unique because it is sort of in a movie that doesn't always take the most realistic route, like it does indulge the flight of fancy. Like the relationship feels very, very real and frustrating, and you want to shake both of them at different times. Like, no, listen to the how is that easier or harder to capture? Because you can probably reach back in the life for that a lot easier than a lot of other relationships where like they just have a good time for 90 minutes. I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of just like it's pure passion, it's lust, but then there's a tenderness to it that grows. And I think that that's something that, yeah, I think a lot of us have experienced, and that we, for our own, different reasons, were able to bring to the role. But yeah, it's like I mean, these two people, the second they see each other, are all in. And then, I think that Rose very purposely aligned the drugs and the love together because it is this just like addiction and this like compulsion. And it's not necessarily healthy, but it's like, it's just what you keep going back to, and almost where you feel safe and taken care of, but also keeps you alive. It's just like, it's a really cool feeling to have in real life, like when you fall in love and when
Yeah.
you're like fighting for it. But yeah, it's also, it's so much fun to play it on screen, especially with these heightened circumstances.
Oh, yeah, because you have to make it still like no one has to think about the part where it's like she just met this person. She is homeless. Oh, well, come live with me. In hindsight, probably some questions should be asked before that. But like the movie doesn't work if you stop and go, wait, what is she doing? At that point in the movie, you need to be like, well, of course, we need to see these people together.
Yeah.
One, like their characters are coming out in an interesting way. Two, like they're doing stuff that we don't mind watching on screen. And three, like you get this sense of like you said, this that the passion and it's gonna explode in a way that like as a moviegoer, you're like, I gotta see where this goes.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, obviously Rose wanted to, you don't want to like sit through this movie and try to pick it apart
Yeah.
logistically. Like it's this kind of deep intensity is not logical. And there's a whole thing within like the lesbian community of U-hauling where it's like one date and you're like you're already packing your bags and moving in.
Yeah.
So like there's like kind of a little bit of comedy to that too. But yeah, from the get-go, this is a movie about people making bad choices and
Yeah.
like trying to clean up those bad choices the entire film, and every single one of those shitty choices comes back to bite them. So it's like you can't sit there and be like, well, why would they do that? Because they are impulsive and they're wild and they're just driving forward.
Because literally what makes this movie, I think, as special as is that you're like, okay, everyone's going to consistently make poor decisions, possibly for good reasons, possibly for the right reasons, but you get to see it play out, and they do play out in a movie that's not long. Like this is a pretty tight movie, but the decisions get to play out over multiple scenes. It's not just like I think in a different movie, like Ed would be in one scene, right? He'd pop up as like the dad. You'd be like, oh, that's the guy you've been talking about. But
Yeah.
he gets to have his own arc, and like in terms of being a dad, is like an okay enough dad, minus some choices, but like clearly does seem to love his children. Like that is again like a layer on this movie of like, oh, that character's harder to hate now. Now we want
Yeah,
to know what he's up to.
his performance is so incredible because there's a moment I remember we're sitting in the hospital room and Jenna Malone's character's in the bed and he just comes up to her and kind of hums a little thing and like runs his hand through her hair, and it's so nurturing and fatherly but also so creepy, and like there's a weird um violence to it. He is it's just really really exciting to watch him work, and then I'm sitting in the chair watching this and I'm like it's chilling.
Oh, he knew the guy like in a way
He-
that is so perfect, or just how he is a dick to Dave, and you're like, oh, he must be a dick there. Oh no, he just doesn't like Dave, and no one's supposed to like Dave. It fits, or just like the way he responds to Kristen, the way you respond to Kristen. Like there is this like, oh, all three of these characters are kind of relating to each other in this very interesting way that I'm sure also just working with those two doesn't make it hard.
Right, yeah, exactly. And it's, you get to see little like unique choices that they make where you're like, ah, that just elevated the moment. I mean, there's a moment where I don't know how spoiler heavy we can be.
Yeah, go for it.
So there's a moment where I kill someone, we'll say.
Yes.
and Kristen's character is there. And instead of being mad at me for killing that person, she's trying to like explain what was happening. Like, I'm not cheating on you. I swear,
Yeah.
it's and that's like that was a moment that was kind of found then and there in the scene. And it makes it so good and so much funnier because it's not just like, what are you doing? It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's this very twisted relationship. And even, she has a fight with her sister at the end, and it should be this big, heavy, knockdown, drag out fight in like kind of almost a reality setting, if you're really thinking about it. But because they're sisters, they have this silly, like almost like they should come up and slap each
Yeah.
other, like in just this sad, like
Oh no, the 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 end of that is perfect as we wrap up here. Just like her like actually puts her hands on her, says something, I think it was love you, sis. Like as she leaves, like, by the way, we're still like we're good. Like this
yeah,
is we'll talk
yeah,
about it later. Like it's perfect. It fits the tone of the movie
yeah.
perfectly. And I think that's at the end of the day what you guys should all collectively be so proud about is that the tone is so consistent and it could have so easily gone over either side of the cliff. And instead you just leave it going, that was wild, and I had somehow a very good time.
Yeah.
And you almost want to watch these characters go on, which is also kind of the biggest compliment. So you should be very proud about this.
Yeah, but hopefully maybe like apart from each other because they really together they create
Oh
something.
no, they're not. This is not for long term, but they'll be all right in a
Yeah,
way. Oh
hopefully. They should
yeah,
all.
exactly. Therapy and maybe some jail time. Thank you so much for doing this. I love seeing you on some of the small screen stuff. So it's great to see it in this kind of like showcase piece. Like I can't wait to see what's next.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, you too. Have a good day.
You too.